All right, welcome back, everybody. Sorry I can't be there. Apparently, I have the Rona, so I'm just going to be back on Monday. Okay. Um, we're going to continue on with the lesson, though. I do have notes for 4.3. This is a continuation of what we did on 4.2. So you're going to be doing graphing with absolute value equations, and we have this same format that we did on the previous notes. My example here is similar to what's in your note packet. I think you just don't have the A, B, C, D at the bottom. So if you want, you can add those in somewhere where you have room. This just kind of recap what we did on 4.2. And if you notice, the equation up here has this format, which looks different than the one that's there in front. So what you can do is you can kind of look for the missing numbers that A is in front of the absolute value bars, what H is inside, and K on the outside. So I'm going to give you an example here. It's this one right here. So that equation is the exact same equation as the one below, but it has all the missing numbers substituted back in. So if you notice, there's a 1 in front of the absolute value bars. There's a 0 being subtracted from the x, and then there's a plus 0 at the end. So remember, 0 doesn't change the value of anything, so that's why we normally don't write those in there, but I wanted to put them in there so you could see what they look like in relation to how we do the vertex and everything else. Okay, same thing with this one. And if you notice, the only difference between the first and second example is that there's a minus sign in front of the 1 here on the second example, and the first example has a positive 1. And if you remember from 4.2, the positive is the one that opens up, and the negative is the one that opens down. So the main thing is, what's my vertex? What's in front, inside the parentheses, excuse me, what's inside the parentheses, and what's after, or I should say what's inside the absolute value bars. Okay. So if I look at the numbers inside and outside, there's a 0, there's a 0. Same thing over here. Here's a 0, and there's a 0. So that means that if I know the vertex, those two represent H and K, which is how they write vertex. And so H is the number inside the absolute value bars. Well, the opposite of that number. And K is going to be that number that's on the right side of the absolute value bars. So for both of these, we're going to have 0, 0, which means that one's going to start at 0, 0 on this graph. This one's going to start at 0, 0 on that graph. You say, okay, well, what's the difference? Remember, the direction that it opens is going to be the difference. So on the first graph, it's going to have a positive 1 in front, which means that if I take the absolute value of a number, I'm going to go over 1 to the right. The absolute value of 1 is positive 1. So I'd go up 1 and then put another dot. And then if I go to 2, go over 2 to the right, and then the absolute value of 2 is also positive 2. So I go up 2 spots. And I could do that with 3 and 4 and 5, and you'll notice that the pattern starts to be, well, for every one I go over, I just go up 1 more. Same thing on the left. If I go negative 1, the absolute value is a positive 1, so I go up. If I go over to negative 2, then the absolute value of negative 2 is a positive 2, so I would go up. So again, the pattern is just every one I go over, I'm going to go up 1. So to the left 1, up 1, to the left 1, up 1. And on the right side is the exact same thing. So the graph looks something like this. Okay. The second one, you are doing the same thing, except now there's a negative 1 in front. So we're going to go over 1, but instead of going up 1, because that negative in front means I multiply a negative 1, then I'm going to go down 1. If I go over 2, it's normally up 2, but because of the negative 1 in front, we multiply, we go down 2. So in this pattern, it goes over 1, down 1, over 1, down 1, and if we can continue that on to the right, and on the left side, the exact same thing. -1, absolute value would be +1, but because of that -1 in front, it flips it back down to -1. So on the left, we're going over 1, down 1, over 1, down 1, because of that -1 in front. All right, so we connect those up. There's the graph. And if you remember what we did on 4.2, they asked about the axis of symmetry. Well, that just means where's the top or bottom sitting, what vertical line. And since the first number in your vertex tells you what number it is, you just say x equals whatever that number is, so 0. And same thing on this one. Max or min depends on which direction it opens. So if it's opening up, you have a minimum. And if it opens down, you have a maximum. So that means there is no maximum on that first one, and the minimum value is 0. Second one does not have a minimum, and the maximum value is 0. Okay, I took a moment to go ahead and draw in the other missing pieces on the graph. So as you can see, each arrow has 2 infinities, and the maximum or minimum point, it has a coordinate of 0, 0. So when we talk about domain and range, remember the left and right are the ones in blue. So for both of these, we said the domain and range would be leaning left, leaning right forever. So it's going to be negative infinity, positive infinity. The range for the first one has a minimum. And remember, the minimum has to do with the y value. So there's your 0. And it's got to go up to the top, which is going to be your positive infinity. So if you write the range on this one, it starts at 0, square bracket, up to positive infinity. Whereas the other starts at negative infinity down here and goes up to positive 0. So it's kind of backwards, which means that your infinity has to be first because it's negative, and then you go 0 second, and then again, bracket on the 0, parenthesis on the infinity. So hopefully this is a good reminder of what we just did on 4.2. Now let's take a look at some of the other ones. Whereas this one here, if you were to fill in the missing numbers, you have a 0 and a 2 for your vertex. Since there was nothing inside the parentheses or the absolute values, there's a 0 with the x, and then outside you already had a -2. And then notice the 1 in front. If there's not a number in front of the absolute value bars, you write a 1. Okay, and just like before, make sure you're looking at the 2 numbers that are your h and k. So this number here with the x is your h. The number outside to the right is your k. Same thing with this one, h and k. So if you didn't already have a vertex, please write that one in. 0, 2 for the second one, and 0, -2 for the first one. All right. This becomes a little easier if you know where the vertex is. So let's put those in. At 0, -2, we'll start right here at the origin and go down 2. Whereas the other one starts at 0 and goes up 2. And then remember the pattern for each of these is if I go over to the right, I go up 1. Over 1, up 1. Over 1, up 1. Over 1, up 1. And to the left, same thing. Left 1, up 1. Left 1, up 1. Left 1, up 1. So that's the pattern for the absolute value bars as long as you have a positive 1 in front. Same thing on here. And same thing here. Left 1, up 1. Left 1, up 1. Left 1, up 1. So graphing these are actually pretty easy to do as long as you know where the vertices are. Okay. Let's have you try the next one. Go ahead and write that one down, and then let's see what you got on the next one. And then don't forget, if there's a number that's already given inside the absolute value bars, then that's your H. Take the opposite of that, and the number on the outside on the right is your K. So if you see it, that's what I have. And if you wrote your vertices, the first one was 1, 0. Remember, it's the opposite of the number inside the absolute value bars, but keep the regular number on the outside, which means this one's -2, 0. Once again, let's put our vertices in now. So at 1, 0, we're going to go over 1 to the right, and then don't go anywhere else. And at -2, 0, we're going to start at the origin, go 2 to the left, and don't go anywhere else. So that's the starting point. That's where your vertex is. And then for each of these, the pattern is going up because they have a positive 1 in front. So we're going to go from the red dot here, over 1 to the right, up 1, and then over 1, up 1. Same thing from the left side. On the red dot, go left 1, up 1. Then left 1 again, up 1 again. So you can see it's not centered at 0, 0. It's actually centered at 1, 0. And then your graph should look something like this one. And over on the other, you guessed it, over 1, up 1 to the right from the red dot, and then over 1, up 1 again, over 1, up 1. And you can go all the way across until you run out of room. And then on the left side, do the same thing from the red dot, over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1 to the left. And then don't forget to draw in your lines. Okay. Hopefully this is getting easier as you see how we're doing these. Try the next one. Okay, if you took the time to write your equation with the missing numbers, the only thing missing really was the 1 in front. And again, both of these are positives, so that just means they're opening up. So really, I probably didn't have to write anything else here. I could have just gone with the equation they had. And then don't forget, it's the opposite of that number. And then keep the sign of the number on the right. So again, opposite of this number inside the absolute value bars, and the one on the right, keep the sign. So your two vertices are those two. And then we just find those on the graph. So notice these are not going to be on the x-axis or y-axis. These are going to be somewhere else. So at 3, 1, we're going to start at the origin and go over 1, 2, 3 to the right and go up 1. There's our minimum point, because remember, it opens up. And then it goes from there, over 1, up 1 to the right, over 1, up 1 to the right. I ran out of room there, so let's go left now. So from the red dot, over 1 to the left, up 1, over 1, up 1, over 1, up 1. And I can continue that all the way across, and you will get a graph that looks like that one. On the one on the right, -2, -4. Don't forget we're going to start at the origin, go over 2 left, and then down 1, 2, 3, 4. And graphing this, 1 right, up 1, 1 right, up 1. So you could actually just kind of see these start to really get easy once you get the hang of them. From the red dot, left 1, up 1, left 1, up 1, left 1, up 1. They get pretty quick too, once you realize how to set it up. Okay. Last ones. Try these on your own and let's see what you get. Okay, hopefully you paused it and you were able to try it on your own. Here's what I have with these two guys. These are where the graphs are. Those are my vertices. And if you have your two graphs facing the correct way, the first one opens up. And notice the vertex is going to be at -1, 2. The opposite of this number, and the same sign as this number.